How's everybody doing? I am just looking to pull up the text here. We keep it in the background at least. We're not going to go through the whole genealogy, but we are here. Matthew on Mondays. Advent begins this Sunday in year A. We are looking at a slightly different text than the official lectionary text. We're looking at Matthew 1, 1 through 17, which is obviously the beginning of Matthew, a little different than the official lectionary text. The lectionary text is Matthew 24, I believe, which is an apocalyptic text that is typical for the first Sunday of Advent in each liturgical year. Usually the Advent, the coming of Christ, we celebrate and commemorate with the first Sunday being a Sunday focused on the second coming of Christ. So with some apocalyptic text mentioning the second coming. But for our purposes, we did the introduction to Matthew last week, and we will do the look at the first 17 verses called the genealogy this week. So that's what we're doing. And I'm going to just silence a couple things here on my computer and hopefully on my phone, and then we can get going. All right. Okay. Let's see. Mark is there. Hey, Mark. How's it going? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. I'm not sure what. It seems like your audio is not on for some reason. Well, Mark is working that out. Just to let you know, if you are watching along, if you are interested in Matthew or what we're talking about today, please go ahead and leave a comment if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Oh, I hear you now, Mark.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I had to fix someone's computer. Okay.
Yeah, but please feel free to leave a comment or post something as we're talking. And if you have a question or comment, we'd be happy to take a look at it and do what we can to talk about it. So, yeah. All right, Mark. How's it going?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I saw my text earlier.
I did, yeah.
Okay, all right. So just be a quick. It won't be long, but
yeah. Well, we may make it short tonight anyway with the big holiday coming up. You know.
Yeah. That's for sure.
The celebration of the colonizers, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, we make of it what we can, right? For whatever reason it began, we find time with family and what we can do with it, right? Yeah. I was just going to let me just put up the I just wanted to start by looking at this, an account of the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. I'm wondering if it gives some of the other alternative. Yeah. So the first word in the Greek is biblos. So where it says account, so that could be book. It could be a couple of other different things. and then of course this word genealogy is basically relates very closely to Genesis, or origins, beginnings. So that all of those sort of things are tied up in there. So some different translations that I saw, some people say the book of the origins, history of the origin, beginning, book of the beginning, all of these different things of Jesus, the Messiah, son of David, son of Abraham. So,
and as we, I guess, as we talk about Matthew more, and we talk about the gospel as a whole, I guess one of the one of the intent of the gospel writers is to, besides being an evangelical document, evangelical in the sense of strengthening the faith of its community, and also opening the door for those outside the community to be a part of the community. But part of the function of the gospel is counter narrative.
right.
And I think it's very interesting that Matthew starts his gospel or counter narrative with his genealogy.
Right.
Doesn't start with the birth. He starts it with the genealogy, and I think that as we look at this gospel as counter narrative, this is the alternative to the hero stories of the Hellenistic culture,
Right.
the Greco-Roman culture, which their hero stories would be that this person was great because they came from this very privileged lineage, and also this person was great because they accomplished these military feats on the battlefield.
Right.
Right. Whereas Matthew's story is counter narrative because of this genealogy that Carter and the one that does the commentary in the Belief series, talks about how the folks mentioned in the genealogy aren't all privileged folks. Not Moses,
right?
Tamar and folks like that in there. Women, outsiders,
right?
Which I think is very, very important. That's very, very important to this counter narrative that Matthew is bringing up here.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking back to the introduction, and thinking back to some of the things we were talking about last week, especially for the setting of the community to which this gospel comes. If you're thinking about how, again, you have this community over in Syria that is probably a heavily Jewish community, where there is this question about what will be the future of Judaism, what will be the future of our faith now that the temple is gone. And we have this question about this, this person who some people are claiming was the Messiah, some people are claiming were this or that, who was, killed so many years before the Rome destroys the temple. But, so you have this gospel that comes in that, like you say, it's a counter narrative to the Roman kind of histories or biographies of their rulers. But it also is a very strong claim to say that those of us who follow this Jesus do so because he fits into this whole story of ours, that he is the son of David, the son of Abraham. He comes through this lineage. So it's like you say, it's a counter narrative to Rome, but it also is I'm not necessarily want to say it's a counter narrative, because I don't know what the narrative necessarily was, at the time, from the inside the Jewish community, but it is it's certainly a strong statement of faith, I guess, or of claiming that you should choose this path of the tradition,
Right.
that this one is a part of the new beginning that started.
Right.
We don't know. We know something has ended. We know that there's this, traumatic situation to be in, this crisis we're in, and we are claiming that there is this new beginning that happened.
Yeah.
That not only is just brand new outside of the context of everything, but is deeply tied with all of our story,
Yeah.
all the way back to Abraham and forward. So it's just that alone is pretty fascinating. And like you say, we can get into more the people who get included in it, but just right at verse 1, the strong claim of who this, of who Jesus is and who Jesus is connected to.
And Matthew's clear that Jesus is the Messiah. So Jesus is the central figure of this long story
Right.
of redemption by the Creator. He is the central figure in it. But this central figure is born through a lineage of folks who were outside. Some of those folks were outsiders in the genealogy. So that God can so God's plan for redemption and bringing life back can go through folks who folks that the greater community says, well, they ain't so great.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's clearly there's the big highlights, in the story, and then there's the folks that everyone might mention.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the folks that not many people would mention.
Yeah.
Then there's probably the folks that no one would mention,
exactly.
But I think you're right. There is a strong claim in these first verses with who they mention, and who they bring into the story to say that, that God is working in this story through all kinds of people.
Yeah.
I was thinking too about, how you were talking about trauma last week.
Yeah.
The situation this is written into is one of trauma and crisis. Yeah. If you dig into the stories of some of these people, there's stories of kind of a deep trauma, or at least residual trauma in their lives, especially the women that get mentioned, many of them,
exactly. Especially folks like Tamar.
Yeah. The lengths that she has to go to secure, a descendant, and Ruth. I mean, even Ruth. I mean, her story is pretty much, told fairly positively in the book of Ruth. But the whole thing begins with everybody's husband dying, and Naomi being left without a son, and the daughters having to decide, what to do. And clearly it seems that there are years there with Ruth and Naomi that they are scraping, barely scraping by, in their in gleaning and all of the things that they need to do. Of course, I mean, Bathsheba is mentioned, offhandedly, kind of by the wife of Uriah, which is, a whole, a whole crazy story.
That's a soap opera.
Right. That's a whole nother thing. Which, of course, not only that, but then that also drags the name of David through the dirt a little bit. Reminds us of the, of the other side of who he was. And then of course Rahab, right? I mean, is in there. Rahab as well. So
who was the person who's sex trafficked?
Right. So you have and you have yeah, like we don't know enough of maybe about her story to figure out,
Yeah,
what all is attached there. And then
yeah,
beyond that, you have, after you have the folks, you have after the exile, and you have all these figures, and we can only imagine what their lives, what their lives were like.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and the things that some of these kings were doing that are mentioned, in verses 7 or so through 10 or 11, after David, you know, growing up in those, I mean, you were well to do growing up probably in the king's realm or whatever, but the things that Solomon was getting up to and the things that some of these other people were getting
yeah,
up to,
yeah,
those in the midst of it were dealing with some some real heavy stuff. So I
yeah,
think, again, like you're saying, that way of seeing God working in the midst of, of all kinds of things going on in people's lives and through
yeah,
the
yeah,
lives of people who are dealing with so many different
yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, to talk about this issue of trauma, I mean, um, we wonder what good can come out of trauma,
Right.
and we, of course we see that as a result Jesus comes out of this, yeah, that in spite of trauma, in spite of pain, you know, that that there can be light at the end of the tunnel, which in the light of the past week, it's certainly good news in light of what's happening over the past week.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, I think that's an important message of this genealogy, um, is that way of seeing, kind of seeing the consistency of God, of God at work in the midst of all of this. And I think there's a lot to be seen by looking at the different, you can dig into a lot of the different people in the story, not just the women in the story, but even some of the men in the story,
Some men, yeah,
and get kind of into who they were and what was going on.
yeah,
Yeah, you can find someone to relate to, no matter who you are, right?
yeah, yeah,
In this genealogy.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And we talk about counterinarrative because um, you compare this to you know, Jesus, the Messiah, the King, as compared to the pretender king on the throne in Herod.
right, right,
Yeah, I think Matthew does an excellent job of setting in the beginning of his gospel. He sets the tone of where the conflict is going to be,
right.
and lays it out clear what the
Yeah,
conflict is going to be.
right.
Yeah, the
Yeah, no, yeah, I appreciate it. I think it was in the Anna Case Winners and the Belief
yeah,
series really
yeah,
highlighted that
yeah,
that idea of looking at chapter 1 and chapter 2,
yeah,
as chapter 1 gives you this hint of who Jesus will be, and then chapter 2 gives you some clear indications of who Herod is going to
yeah,
be.
going to be.
Yeah, particularly with the story of the Magi,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
slaughter of the innocents.
yeah,
You get all of that there. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah. No, I think, and if obviously the marginality thing comes up quite a bit in the list of people in the genealogy, as we talked about.
yeah, yeah. And because like you made a good point that when you talk about folks like Rahab, um, we always hear from on like on Rahab's story, we always hear the majority's view of it,
Right.
but what we don't hear the other side of it was the fact that she was sex trafficked, and that whole socio-economic issues behind that whole thing.
Right.
We just hear, I guess what I'm trying to say, we hear the males the males side of it,
Right. Right.
but we
Right.
don't hear the other side of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I guess I would say, I mean, yeah, in some ways, a lot of what's being said here is pretty is it, a lot of folks, you kind of gloss over it in many ways.
Yeah,
But I guess the other thing to point out is just this, just to point out to folks is in 17 kind of gives you 17 lays out kind of the numbers theme, the what you want to call it, the numerology or whatever you want to call it,
yeah, yeah,
uh, the 14s and the 14s and the 14s,
yeah.
um, just suggesting, again, this idea of 7 being kind of a number of completion, and then
Exactly.
14 being a doubling of that, so, and that sort of thing. And then, a couple commentators pointed out that it, David is a very central figure, and in David's name appears in the genealogy as the 14th word. And David, the Hebrew letters for David, there's a tradition of applying the number to each letter. So the D in Hebrew is the 4th letter, and the what gets translated as a V in English is the 6th. So you have 464, and that equals 14.
Okay.
So there's this kind of I guess inside baseball, Hebrew way
Yeah,
of highlighting David in the text, by all of these 14s for someone of that tradition who might be paying, close attention. There is that, I guess,
and
focus there.
yeah, and the fact that David is mentioned several times in the genealogy, which is crucial for Matthew in laying out the
Right.
fact that Jesus is a descendant of David, and therefore the true heir of the throne, as opposed to the pretender, the pretender that's on and pretender in that whole family that's on the throne now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in juxtaposition to the one who desires to be king of the Jews, Herod,
Yeah.
And the one who gets a claim to be by the end of the story, in a somewhat twisted fashion, but and then also, of course, kind of making that claim against any other power or authority that would claim to be. Yeah, and I don't know who was which commentator was saying it, but someone was saying that in the rest of the gospel, as the Son of David name is mentioned, it's often attached to healings and exorcism.
Mm-hmm.
So it has that connotation as well.
Yeah.
Throughout the story.
That the name of the Son of David is a force, is a power which restores, is a power that cleanses, a power that heals.
Right.
And contrast that to the to the power of empire, which demonizes, oppresses, and marginalizes.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's probably, as we begin the season of Advent, and as we folks prepare for the coming, I think that is important. That especially when we talk about, especially over the past couple of days, that Jesus is through God, the source of healing, the source of comfort, the source of transformation.
Right.
And that we are called to be that source of healing, that source of transformation. And that's what this, I think, Matthew, and as we talk about counter narrative, that's what this community is supposed to be. Source of healing, source of comfort, source of transformation. And the question I think we have to ask ourselves is, as we look at the church today, do we understand what that means to be the community of healing, that community of transformation, of comfort? What does that mean, especially in these days and times? What does that mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, there yeah, I think, Mark's gospel begins with, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it kind of, then by the end, you have the apostles waiting for Christ to come to them
Mhm.
in Galilee. And you get this real sense of, there's the beginning of the story, and then the disciples are the continuation of the story, of the story, like you're saying. And then in this text, we have, the Genesis, or the origin of Jesus. And then by the end of the gospel, you have the commission, where Jesus sends them out, to make disciples, and then says, I will be with you to the end of the age.
Mhm.
So you have the beginning of the story at, the beginning at the with the genealogy, and the beginning of this book, or this, the book of origins. And then you
Yeah.
have this promise at the end, to that kind of all that's there is going to be continued through you until the end of the age.
Yeah.
What I wanted to just, what I was going to look at quickly is, I think what we forget too is, the idea of the king. Well, first of all, the idea of the king is something that God never wanted,
Right. Exactly.
right?
Right.
In
Monarchy.
the Old
Yep.
Testament, told the people that this would only lead to conscription
Yeah.
and slavery, basically, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But
Monarchy. Even go back to early days of Israel is an urban foreign concept. Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly.
But then it gets kind of, as it gets embraced, the king becomes a stand-in kind of for who the people are supposed to be.
Mhm.
And so, like, for example, I'm just going to pull up, something like Psalm 72,
Yeah.
where it says, give the king your justice, O God, and your righteousness to a king's son. May he judge your people with righteousness and your poor with justice. May the mountains yield prosperity for the people, and the hills in righteousness. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people, give deliverance to the needy, and crush the oppressor. And on and on and on. This, his day may righteousness flourish and peace abound until the moon is no more. Um, all of these things. But in general, you have, again, this, like you were saying, like, we are to be the people of healing, the people of justice, the people of, who bring an end to, the people who help the poor, the people who, he delivers the needy when they call, the poor,
Mhm.
and those who have no helper. He has pity on the weak and the needy, and saves the lives of the needy from the oppression and violence. He redeems them, and precious is their blood in his sight. So on and on. You have this, even the claims of, a king, or following in the footsteps of a king, or this, on the monarchy, or that kind of idea, as you're saying, gets kind of swallowed up by God's purposes,
Yeah.
to say, if you want this, then this person, and and the and his and that person's realm must continue to bring forward the things that I am calling,
Right.
calling for,
Right. And I think
healing and justice.
it goes back to the
Yeah.
overall theme of that the king, whether it be an Israelite king or when you're looking at the prophets, the foreign kings became agents of God's will. That the leader is the agent of God, is the agent of God's will, of God's intent, whether it be
Right.
David or Solomon or were prophets, who was Nebuchadnezzar or Darius or whoever,
Right.
carrying out judgment. But they are agents. They are all agents of God's will, and that's what Psalm 72 says, that the king is supposed to be the agent of God's will for carrying out these good things.
Right. And I think I think what the gospel, what Matthew and all of the gospels really do this is suggest that Jesus comes as this one who is called for in this psalm, who is promised in so many ways throughout the history, connected with, the calling of Abraham and to be a light to the nations and so on and on and on, bring prosperity and so on and so forth. But what kind of becomes clear in all of the gospels is that Jesus is this leader or this king or whatever, however you want to say it, but that that is so intimately connected with what not only what God desires, but what all the people are supposed to be. What all of humanity is supposed to be, and that there's always a giving away of that role to everyone else. I mean, it's not something that just where Jesus just holds on to that to say that I'm the only one, I'm the only one that does this, and you just need to obey me. It's like, look, I'm trying to give away this you need to take up this healing. We'll see in the gospel, as Jesus heals, but then Jesus says, like, look, I'm calling you 70 to come and heal, and go out and do what I'm doing. Listen to the call of the poor. I'm calling you all to do it, and by the end of the gospel, again, it's the call to the people to go and make disciples and to continue this mission, on and on. And I think that again is like, it begins with this collection of people that lead up to Jesus, that come from all of these varied backgrounds, Jew, Gentiles, whatever. And then kind of gets focused in on Jesus through the Gospels, but then opens up through the Gospels, through the disciples and on to this other next broad range of people who are part of the story. That we all find ourselves in, no matter.
And I think the good thing about the genealogy is that that these persons mentioned, this that they despite their good side and their flaws, they despite their flaws or whatever, or their or the pain, the trauma they were dealing with, they were able to be part of that plan to provide healing and provide redemption or provide good things. And I think that's the call of those of us in the church, that in spite of our own flaws, our own shortcomings, that we too can be agents of God's mercy, agents of justice, agents of transformation. So I think
some of the people, it's not even, it's the flaws of the people around them, subjecting them to a certain thing. I mean, I think of Tamar, Tamar in the end really it's not so much that she has any personal flaws herself, is that the people around who are not willing to follow what they, they're not willing to do what they're supposed to do. They're not following the rules. So she has to figure out a way within that to make a way out of no way, so to speak. But I think you're right. That's the thing. That's kind of a lesson in the genealogy about you can participate in what God is doing, no matter where you're at, what you're going through.
And I mentioned, I don't know if you've seen Black Panther. I went and saw it yesterday, and I thought Letitia Wright did a really good job. And I mean, I won't tell the whole story, but she is dealing with the trauma and pain of her brother's death.
Right.
I mean, and I guess the one issue is, how can I be a leader of this country, but I still am struggling to get past the fact of my brother's death. And then she experienced another great loss. I won't tell you if you haven't seen the movie. Another great loss in the movie. So that pain and that hurt follows her throughout the whole movie, and that resolution of that. So that's the issue, that in spite of the pain and trauma that we're dealing with, that we're called to to do some great things, but we need to deal that pain and deal those issues.
Right. Yeah. 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 No, No, I think you're right there. Yeah. So I think if you're going to be, you might end up hearing Matthew 24 this week, but you might end up hearing Matthew 1. I don't know what you'll hear, but
You haven't decided what you'll preach on Sunday?
I'm going to be preaching out of this one. Yeah.
Okay.
From Matthew 1.
Okay.
Yeah. So. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah. Well, is there anything else, Mark, that you wanted to bring up from anything that you read?
No.
Otherwise, I think we're good. We might just, we might have a short and sweet.
What's I don't remember the agenda. What's up next?
All right, let's see here. I'll find it real quick. Next, we're going to look at Matthew 3, 1 through 12. So that'll get us back on track with I think that'll get us back on track with the lectionary.
Okay.
It should be about John the Baptist, I'm guessing.
Okay, Matthew 3. Okay.
That's normally how it goes, is you get an apocalyptic text and you get a John the Baptist text.
Okay.
Yeah, so Matthew 3, 1 through 12. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Well, hopefully we'll have Marcy will be able to join us next week, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah, I think
we're going to have to, yeah.
I think something unexpected came up for her, but I think she's okay.
Yeah, I think, she said traveling or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yep, yeah. She's expected next week for sure.
Yep.
So
yeah.
All right, well, good talking to you, Mark.
Good talking to you. Have a great Thanksgiving, you and your family.
Yeah, you too.
Enjoy.
You too.
See you next week.
All right, sounds good.